Welcome to our Sacred Wisdom podcast. I'm Chris Clifford here with the other podcast host, Rebecca Parks, and with our returning guest, Sue Cimino. And today we have a new guest, Ramón Gil. I will introduce Ramon very briefly because I think most of our viewers and most everyone knows Ramon, but he is our Connecting Consciousness North American and Caribbean Continental Coordinator. So, Sue and Ramon, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful
So,
to be here.
Great. So today we are going to start with a topic that is very relevant for today's time. It's our upcoming monthly spiritual topic titled A Spiritual Approach to Life's Challenges. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Becky to get us started.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you. Okay, so last month, last month we covered attention, intention, and inspiration, which focused on the positive creative side. This month, we're going to expand these concepts, examining what's within and what's beyond our control, how to deal with stressful situations, and recognizing that it's within our control to avoid certain situations. We also explore how the current times are both stressful and exciting. Stressful because events sometimes unfold in ways we might not have chosen if we were in control, and exciting because we're witnessing truths coming to light and we know we can be involved in building a better future. In the attention and intention topic, we noted that there are times in life when we can plan our day-to-day affairs and others when we must cope with unexpected and challenging situations. The first is proactive, while the second is reactive, yet we can be mindful in both. Also, in both scenarios, we can accept where we are and focus on where we want to go from there. We acknowledge that it's easier to manage our day-to-day activities and create the future we desire when things are going our way. But life has a way of throwing us curveballs. We all have, at one time or another, experienced life's little disappointments, unexpected issues, as well as short-term and long-term stresses. At times, life seems to be going in the wrong direction, and we need to take measures to turn it around and follow a path more in line with our soul's calling. Most of us would like more control in our everyday lives. Yet, if everything were completely within our control, we would lose something very special, that magic moment and the possibility of serendipity. And this is a serenity prayer by Dr. Reinhold Niebuhr. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And with that, I'd like to hand over to our guests, Sue and Ramon, whoever wants to go first.
Ladies first.
That was easy.
Mhm.
I love it, and I'm just going to say a couple of things because often, like we often think the curveballs we get are something going wrong, and often it's something going right, and it's a matter of reframing our expectations or allowing because we come in knowing, oh, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing. We know it at a higher level. We don't know it here. And often, like if you start taking, oh, I want it this way, not that way, you start getting little whispers or nudges, or which are often those challenges, those unexpected and challenging things where you get a whisper or a nudge or something that turns everything upside down, and you go, oh, woe is me, this is bad. Whereas it is actually what is redirecting you toward what is in your soul's purpose. And so it's fascinating because you really need to be able to stop for a minute and allow allow and listen. And Grace is, I have my mug that says grace happens. Those are the moments where if you will stop trying to make it the way you think it should be, which I love your Venn diagram that said this is what we can control and this is what we can't. But if we will allow that energy, that connection, that spiritual unfolding, it will enable us to move beyond the unexpected challenge in a way that takes us to a higher expression, to a more beautiful, graceful unfolding. Ramon, what do you think about that?
No, I agree totally. And it is something that I also love the Venn diagram because it shows very clearly, in a very simple way, exactly how, what you can and cannot control. I will add one point to one of the things that you can't control, which is on the Venn diagram, which is how other people, see and think and react, right? That we have to be very careful that we don't assign them intent. Because sometimes we think, oh, this is why this person is doing this. This is why that person, it may not be the truth. Now, we have to take every situation. And the most difficult part of this topic, it is not one time that you do it. It's constantly every day. A lot of people believe, oh, once I learn this, oh, then I'm absolutely fine. No, it's on a day-to-day basis because you can be in the most spiritual level because you've done your yoga, your meditation and everything. But once you leave the house, it's all bets off. Anything can happen anywhere, at the grocery store, in the car, all these different things. And this is where you understand that this is a constant thing. Once you do it more and more and more often, it becomes almost second nature. And you question yourself before you react, because at the end of the day is how are you going to react to the situations that are happening? I love the fact you control your thoughts, you control your inner talk. And sometimes we are guilty of really, really, really talking very negative ourselves, and we convince ourselves and we bring ourselves down in vibration just by hammering ourselves or just focusing so much. Is that you have to learn to, when the situation comes, because sometimes we can't stop it, or we have to recognize it and go, oh, I'm not going there. I will not let this drag me down. And not see it as a loss, like, oh my God, I'm not there. Yes, you are. You're getting to the level, or you are at the level because you recognized it and you're like, okay, put it aside. Okay, no, this is starting to bring me down. Let's push it aside, so these kinds of things. So it is something that I find really interesting. And in a lot of my conversations, we do address this kinds of things because it's a day-to-day thing.
Ramon, I love. Oh, sorry, Chris, you go first.
Go ahead, Becky. You go first.
Oh, okay, thanks. Ramon, I love that, and Sue as well. And Ramon, just to say, when you live in a house with a lot of cats and dogs, and a strong extraterrestrial connection, even things happen within the house. You don't have to go outside
within the house. That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add that. And also, you're so right about what we tell ourselves. And I don't know why it seems funny that, and I know it's not just me, I know it's, many, many, many people, most people focus much more on the negative. Like, you can get 100 nice little compliments and then one bad comment, and you focus in on the negative. I mean, I've learned not to do that now, because when you are a slightly public figure or in anywhere where people like to comment about you, I've learned to just not worry about the comments. But this is where social media is so manipulative, and it's a minefield for young people, because they are so influential and really want everyone to like them. You go, whatever you say or whatever you do, it doesn't matter what age in the teens you are, or as a child, you just want people to like and accept you, because that's one of the most important things about being a human being, is to feel loved and accepted. And social media just, flaws that, because people can say nice things 1 minute and then horrible things the next. So yes, it's a steep learning curve that perhaps that generation that's now growing up and so on are learning. But I think it's unnecessary and way too damaging. And just focusing on that side of thing, because what other people think of you, and you don't even know what they think of you compared to what they say about you, but what other people say about you, and then what you read into that, you have to learn to have the personal boundaries and the confidence, the inner confidence, to know that it doesn't matter what other people are saying about you. If you feel that you are doing the right thing in your life, you're on the right track, or you're with the right person, or you are wearing what you want to wear and you feel happy with what you're wearing today, or how you do your hair, whatever it is, it's amazing how people have comments about it. So, I mean, I don't know how we've turned it round to this, but actually that's one of the most important things, isn't it? It's about feeling accepted by your peers, your family, your friends. And as we all know, everyone sort of listening to our podcasts, we've walked a more a more solitary path, really, where we're following our truths, and that is not consistent with what many family and friends. And so we've already gone through these challenges, and we already feel more isolated, and are already trying to find ways of perhaps building bridges, or just being able to get on, especially during times of holidays, because I know in America Thanksgiving's coming up and we've got Christmas coming up in the next month or so. So yeah, I know I'm rambling now, so I'll hand over to Chris. Chris.
Well, there's so much there to comment on. I think social media, there is a place for it. It's a wonderful way to connect. It is a really good topic, because I think for the younger generation, and also for us, right? It's very easy to get caught up in how many people liked what I put, who said what about this, and really on our path, which you're right, can be lonely at times, but it's like trying to get into a place where the only thing that really matters is what you think and what your truth is, because my truth is different from your truth, and being able to stand in that truth regardless of what other people are saying. I had I can't remember who said this, but one of the spiritual teachers that I had said to become immune to the criticism or the praise of others. And I've always remembered that, because it brings you back to what is my truth, what's important to me, and to not think about what other people are saying. So I think through this conversation, we're kind of scattering little ideas here. And so one is to find within yourself your truth and stand in it, regardless of what anyone else thinks. And then what Ramon and Becky were talking about, whether you call it positive self-talk, or sometimes I call it reframing, right? When I catch myself focusing on the negative, which we all do at times. I've seen many studies that say our brains are wired to focus on the negative, which is why it's really important to first be aware, second, to catch yourself, and then I just call it reframing. When I ask myself a bunch of questions like, well, is that really true? And, because a lot of times these things come up as, well, I always do this or that, never happens or whatever. And if you ask yourself, is that really true? The answer is, no, it's not true. And then you can shift into something that's better and more nurturing and nourishing for you. Then I wanted to real quickly touch on Sue made a point about not labeling something, these weren't the words she used, but basically not labeling something as good or bad. And I think that's another tool that is so, so important, because if you can step back and try to look at things from a neutral perspective, and then ask questions like, why is this happening? Not in a woe is me kind of way, but why is this happening? How can I learn from this? What's going to come of this? Maybe something beautiful and amazing is unfolding. And so someday I do that, but again, it takes awareness. And a lot of times I'll catch myself, or like the other day, I was talking to Sue and I said, that's a shame. And Sue said, is it really? And that's like such a good reminder. So that's another question like that you can ask yourself. Now, I know I'm rambling here a little bit, but I'm going to shift gears, because I also want to acknowledge this for me personally too. These are beautiful times, but they are very challenging times too. And almost everyone that I talk to in CC and outside of CC is kind of finding this to be the case right now. And so I think some of it's the energies of our times. Some of it, I'll be honest, I've been fascinated by the 1111 portal, which many people believe is from 1111 to 1212. And so I've done a bunch of research about that. And whether you look at it from a spiritual and astrological, a numerology perspective, most people are saying it's about endings and letting go, of things that tend to be very hard to let go of. And then it's about new beginnings and letting it in. And most of the research that I've done, they're saying this is all happening at the same time, which again, in my life, that is very true. And so whether it's a work situation, a financial situation, family relationships, whatever, I just wanted to kind of put that out there and acknowledge that, because so many people are experiencing it. And when you think about things ending and beginning at the same time, and all the emotions associated with trying to let go of the old, trying to open up to the new, and all of that, it does create an opportunity to have a spiritual approach to life's challenges. So again, very relevant topic.
I love that. I think that's what all of you have said. But it's interesting because of we're this challenging time. We think historically, like we think of our families and, oh, when I was young, I did, and things progressed in a certain way. And we just make the assumption it's going to keep progressing that way. And we are in unprecedented times where the new is beginning while the old is ending. And it's unknown. And so our expectations, we have no idea where to put our expectations, because the past is not rolling forward the same as it has before, like in our memory. So that finding a safe place within yourself so that you can surf through this unknown unfolding that we're going through is huge. And I love what all of you said about how the negative, and I just want to say a little bit more about that, because some of it is programming, some of it is just the social interactions. I figured it out early, like unless you have something to complain about, you don't quite fit in with everybody. And then social media for sure. And it's we get to choose what we are going to allow to come into our site, into our space. And I've been noticing lately, like there's all these interesting little stories in social media, but they don't make me feel good. And it's just like, no, just stop those, because the things that just sort of sneakily take us down, they're everywhere. And it's just like, it's our job to go, nope, not going there. Same with the negative thoughts that we put on ourselves. It's like that first negative thought, we think, oh, that's just that's no big deal. But it's like, it's a slippery slope and we're going down. Whereas if you can find the thought of connection to your divine, or to oneness, or to the beautiful future we're going to, if you can have that thought, that's also a slippery slope. It just goes to a higher frequency. And we are in this amazing, okay, I can go there. We're in this amazing period where we are surfing frequencies, really. You know, we have those moments, and then we have those moments, and we have those moments, and we have those moments. And we get to choose how we ride through that. And that affects everything, because later in the thing you talk about how we are affects the collective and the universal outpicturing.
Mm.
Yes.
Sue, I think that's so beautiful. Do you know, I remember learning once that humans have the greatest range of emotions, you know, from the very highest, you know, joy and enlightenment, right down to the very worst, the lowest, just hopelessness and guilt and apathy and things like that. And we can experience it all in, you know, half an hour. And other beings just don't have quite those range of emotions. And I think that's one of the really special things about this planet, that we can surf these energies. And I know that there are dimensional overlays wherever we are, and other beings can be right next to us, but we can't see them because they're in a different frequency. They're like a different TV channel, as it were. You can just change channels and you're there. But some of us do have the ability to actually, not just emotionally, but mentally and physically, change channels more and more now. And that expands one's consciousness hugely, because once you know this, you really know it, not just as a concept, but you've experienced it, then you just know that there is a vastness to our experience that we've never had. It's a bit like, so say you spent your whole life just eating white bread, and that's all you've ever known. So you just eat white bread, or maybe white rice, whatever. And then one day someone introduces all these different things that you can eat. Your mind's blown. It's like, oh, I didn't know I could eat all these things. It's so exciting. And you know, what's this like and what's that like? It's the same with, for our mind, that seeing other dimensions and possibilities and energies. So you're right, Sue. So when you connect with that and when you open up to that, you realize really fully that there is a magic to every moment. And that's one of the things where serendipity comes in, because once you have that connection, I mean, some people might have that connection and see something and think that puts them in the greatest fear. And don't worry, I mean, I've been there, done that. But over time, you can contextualize that, put that into context, and also see the beauty of like all there is, rather than just focusing on, you know, one thing or something negative. So what I'm saying is that really we do have the choice. It's with the mind. It's like training a muscle. You have to train your mind to think, no, I'm not going there. That doesn't serve me. I'm going to choose to think like this. And once you can do that, and once you can see, and also when you just look for the smallest things, like if you just see a butterfly on a flower, or I mean, for me, when I went to America, I was beyond excited to see a hummingbird for the first time. And I saw the red cardinal bird, which actually someone here, I'm going to just bring this. Somebody here made this for me, and I love it so much because it was the very first bird that I saw in Tennessee. And I saw a golden eagle, and I saw two bald eagles. When you start to notice things around you, and it doesn't have to be nature, it can just be, you know, whatever it is, you start reading the signs, and then, which we call in sort of British shamanism, the ways of the weird, spelt WYRD. not WEIRD. It's learning to read the signs in the world around you. And you can do that whether you're in the countryside or a city. And that enables you to see that you are part of a bigger picture going on all the time. And there are things for you to read. It's almost like understanding that the world around you is reflecting back on you what you need to learn and what you need to see and where you need to go. And once you can do that, then you learn sort of the magic of the flow of life.
Absolutely. And one thing, I love what you said because it's absolutely true. It reminds me of one thing that I had to learn myself and hammer myself, I'm about. Number one, sovereignty. We cannot give our sovereignty away. So, past monthly spiritual topics come back into the forefront, in order for us to be able to be leveled and balanced in our approach, we cannot give our sovereignty away, Now, I have also noticed that we spiritual people, or people on the spiritual path, have a problem. We overcomplicate things, seriously overcomplicate things. There's many people I've talked to. What techniques, what mantras, what books should I read? All these things. And I'm kind of like, keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's basically understanding what it is to be a spiritual person. You see, most people have the wrong impression of what a spiritual person is because we've been taught, a guru that's isolated or someone who's just always so happy and oh my God. That's not a spiritual person, in my opinion, very simple. I like what the Law of One and even Cryon and other channelers have said because they've been asked, how do I know, people are asking, how do I know that I am moving forward in the spiritual path? How do I know that I've become a spiritual person? And the answer was always the same. The characteristics of a spiritual person is balance. Nothing negative throws you off and nothing positive throws you off, because there are some people who, when positive things happen, they go crazy. And then mess things up, celebrating and all that stuff, whatever. So completely balanced. You don't have to be joyful all the time, happy all the time, No, that is not being a spiritual person, because it ignores the nature of this universe and is not just of life, but of the universe as a whole, its duality. But when you focus on, let's approach everything balanced, then things become a lot more clear and a lot simpler. You don't need a 12 step of this, a 10 step of this, 15 book series of this and that, whatever. No, it's something very simple that you can control yourself, and always make sure you do not get, like you mentioned, we have one of the longest range in feelings, and in emotions in this galaxy. Don't know for the universe, but at least in this galaxy, we have the widest range. We're crazy, because we go from 0 to 100 in 1.5 seconds, and so there we have to learn to balance that and not understand that the emotions are not something that just happen. It is something that is innate within us, but nobody else has control over them. We do. We have the control. And that is because we sometimes say, we may not control the situation, but we control the feeling and what we're going to feel about that. And most of the people that I see always in a recurring negative tornado, I call it, just they're always having the same problems and everything. They tend to assign the feelings that they feel to someone else. And I'm like, that's not how it should be. We should be the ones in control. And that is a process. Sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, that's great. Do you know what? You're so right. I mean, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with feeling the real highs and the lows. I think that's that's part of being human.
Yes.
But I think that you have hit on something that, you know, we were talking in this topic about things that are in our control and things that are out of our control. So when a crisis happens, you know, whatever it is, however big or small it is, really it's how one reacts to that. And as Sue said, why is it negative? Because crises can seem like they're negative, but it could be a way of saying, no, end of the old, that's enough, and the start of the new. And if one can see the bigger picture of it and see that, yes, it'll be challenging, yes, you will lose this with it, but you could gain that. And as the phrase goes, when one door closes, another one opens. That's so true. And if it's about putting things in perspective and drawing on personal experience. So it is hard if you're younger, really, if you're a young soul or a young person in this lifetime, to cope well with very challenging situations because you perhaps don't have the experience to draw on. But as one goes through life, and we have sort of gained a whole wealth of experience, then it does, I think, if you learn, because not everybody does, but if you learn, then it is easier to draw on that and think, it's not a calamity, it's not the end of the world, the sky's not falling in. I can handle it like this. Or for me, when things get very, very stressful, I just say, just take it one moment at a time, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. Let's just see, if we're waiting for this, let's see what the result is of that. And we go on to the next thing. And then we just take things bit by bit by bit. And then you can handle things. And then you can think, right, how can I handle this? But it's always learning new skills. There's always the opportunity for learning. There's always the opportunity for growth. So there is that.
So I loved what you said about the changing channels, or like part of the transition we're in, or when facing challenges, is learning how to recontextualize, how to taking what appears to us, what our assumptions are, but putting it in a new context or looking at it with a new perspective, because that keeps you and reading the signs. That's the other thing, Becky, that you said, was reading the signs, because when you read the signs that are coming to you, it's how use that to navigate. Like if something's going on and you just stop and read the signs, like what's going on? Is there a door open? Is doors closed? Like what? Be aware, and then the signs will lead you. I think grace will unfold, and many people like, oh, I can't hear, I don't get my, but it's like, you have a sense of rightness. If you be quiet enough, you will feel, oh, that's it, I feel right that with that direction, this pathway, oh, it doesn't feel, this one feels better, like the senses of rightness. And Ramon, what you said about overcomplicating it, what I think that is people, we live in a world that's very left brain, very logical, like logic is valued, and so they're going to become more spiritual, but they're taking their logical mind into that experience, thinking they're going to think their way into being more spiritual, or they're going to work it, and it's like, no, it's not quite like that. Finding the place where you can allow and connect to your sovereignty and to, a greater sovereignty, will help you navigate wherever. And so I love that people asked, how do I know if I'm spiritual? It's like, when you're asking the questions, it's probably not there yet. Because, do you know what I mean? It's like, you're trying to fit your new what's coming into your old paradigm. We are shifting paradigms. We are shifting paradigms. How do you move through the new paradigms? Watching the signs, I think, is a big one.
Yeah, I love it. And so, and I know for me, I think for a lot of people, one of the hardest things is letting go, because you think about, year after year after year, right? We've had our approaches to things and we've learned certain things, and it's like stepping back and being able to understand we are in unprecedented times, and oftentimes there are better ways out there. So being like open, and I think asking for help to find, the best way and what's in, full alignment with your higher self is so, so important in these times. I find myself doing that all the time because it's kind of like, what you know. And a lot of times there's better stuff out there, but you don't know it. So it's taking a pause and it's asking for help. And then I'm going to go back to a practical thing here, because Sue, you had mentioned complaining. And one of the things that I learned in Jack Canfield's book, The Success Principles, which I love that book, but he says something like complaining is that when there's something that you don't like or don't want, but you don't want to do anything about it. And so that really struck me. And then it goes on to say, like, once you know this, you'll never look at complaining the same way again. And it was like that for me, because then I'd start to complain about something and you're like, oh, it's because I don't like or want this. And then once you know that, then you have to ask yourself, what do I want? How can I get there? What are the choices that are available to me? And, there are always choices available to us, whether you're thinking about, a complaint or a situation that you have. And I think that's kind of another practical tip, that to train yourself to step back and say, okay, what are the choices, right? I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to be my own. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to accept what it is right now, and then look at what are the choices are available. Ask for help. Maybe ask for help to see ideas or choices, or get signs or whatever for something that maybe you didn't think about, but there's always choices.
Chris, I love that. Sometimes it is difficult when we're used to just going with the flow and living the life that we're living. It can take a lot to step out of your comfort zone and say, no, I've had enough of this right now. Or to, when you say, what are my choices? Or sometimes it's just put up and shut up, because there's not a lot you can do right now, but know that, or learn to cope better with a situation. And sometimes there are options where you just think, right, now I can do something different. So sometimes there are options that are opening, like, new avenue, try something new, do something new, live somewhere new, whatever. And sometimes there are options where it's dig deeper and learn to cope with what you're doing right now, because there will be a time that you'll be able to move on and do something else, or use these skills to, or use these challenges to gain more skills in coping, perhaps, or digging deep within your own resources. That there's so many different ways. It's not always, oh, this is happening, therefore I've got to do that. Is this, are you right with the choices? This is happening, so these are the choices I have. And then you can, really perhaps sit down and work and project where each of them will take you. And then you can think, well, which one do I really want to do? And in our last podcast with Kim, we did say, and he said, the spirituality really is just one breath away, and it is as simple as that. It's having the intention to take charge of one's life, to think, I know, instead of, as you say, complaining and blaming and feeling apathetic and think, oh, there's nothing I can do, I'm a pawn in the whole thing, I'm not in charge of my destiny, to then recognizing actually you are in charge of your destiny, and there are lots of different things that you can do. And this is what this topic's really about, because it is about intention and attention, which we did last month, well, November, and taking that one step further and just seeing what our full range of boundaries are, and recognizing that we actually have the ability to change our lives on a dime. You know, we can do that. And so many people have and do. Like in old lives, when I've been doing, you know, if anyone who does past life regression and or learn about history, I'm just thinking about England now, but it'd be the same for probably anywhere. You know, you perhaps would stay in that you grow up and you'd stay within a whole your own community, whether it's a village or whatever it is. You might not travel that far. Some people do. Some people travel and explore and have exciting lives. Others often just are born, they live their life and they die, and it doesn't seem that eventful. It's, you know, you don't move village, you don't change community, you're just staying with your village or your tribe or your community your whole life. And there are always opportunities for growth, but it's not that expansive. It'll have to be more internal with learning how to cope with situations and so on. But now, the lives we're living now, technically, the world is our oyster. We can travel anywhere, do anything, meet anyone. I mean, yes, there's limits, but not that many limits. The potential is there to do anything with your life. And as a result, people are living faster lives, experiencing way more things. And so the spiritual growth, there is a potential for much greater spiritual growth because one is experiencing so much more in one's life. And I think that's just an exciting sign of the times. Then when you put that in with the context of the history that we're in right now, the portals that really do have an enormous impact, the fact that this three-eye atlas is, you know, in our heavens, as it were, you know, in our galaxy, in our solar system, quite close to Earth, coming close to Earth, and we know it's an intelligent craft of some sort. And why is it here, you know, right now? Because it knows, and it is known for billions of years, that right here, right now is a phenomenally important and exciting time. And humanity is on the brink of a spiritual expansion. And we are actually at the forerunners of it. And you don't have to, as Ramon said, you don't have to be a guru sitting on a mountain. You don't have to have read all these complicated scriptures and stuff. Yeah, that's exciting to experience. Yeah, that's interesting to know, but it's only interesting to know. It's not actually that important. And spirituality is not complicated. It is simply learning to know yourself, because that's what your life is all about. Your relationship with yourself and the rest and everything around you. And that's actually the most important thing. And from that, learning your full potential and learning to do good. By that, I mean recognizing that a choice to help others, to give rather than to take. And I know we talk about balance, and there always has to be a give and take of energy, but a truly spiritual person recognizes this, recognizes the give and take, but wants to share, wants to give joy. And that, when you do that, you get that back naturally, instinctively. So, I mean, that's actually what spirituality is about. It's not a secret formula. It's really simple. And all of us have the ability to do it. It's not for the select few. It's for absolutely everybody.
Absolutely. And if I can add one point to what you're saying, one thing, in order for us to reach what you've said, we have to address one thing that a lot of people forget or ignore, which is in the Venn diagram, one of the things that you can't control is the past, right? And we need to be very, very careful as to how we handle our past, because many of us, and I say, you know, in CC and in general, Many people are walking around with a backpack or rucksack full of absolute stones of every mistake they've done in their entire life, and because we are compassionate people and want to be spiritual people, we carry that burden. We need to let go of that. When I talk to people, we discuss it and everything, I'm like, what I think, they ask my opinion. Everything that happened in our past made us who we are today. The big question is, do you like yourself today? And do you love yourself today? Because some people love themselves, but they don't like themselves. And some people like themselves and they don't love themselves, So both things is like, I like me. I think, I've made mistakes, I've done things that I regret, There's been, I've had to deal with the shadow work because, we do have both the positive and the negative, and we have to be aware of that and not completely ignore it. But once we let go of that and realize that every good and every bad thing that happened in my life made me the person I am today, I think we should all be like, wonderful. All the bad things, all the good things make us. And then the question is, if you don't like yourself or love yourself, then you got to work on that, because you can't change your past, but you can change how you feel and think about your past and how much you let your past affect your present and your spiritual path, So I just wanted to add that because.
Well, that fits in so beautifully. I mean, that's judgment and forgiveness, and that's one of the biggies of all of our spiritual topics in the foundational year, because that's the crux of it. You need to forgive yourself. It's hard forgiving others for their transgressions against you, but it's even harder because we're so self-critical. We're naturally well, not everybody. People who are in denial are not self-critical, so they just project it on other people. But generally, a lot of spiritual people and a lot of sensitive people are very self-critical, and are just like, oh, I should have done this and I should have done that, and and you have to let that go. You have to forgive yourself for the big stuff and the little stuff, because, as you say, Ramon, we're human beings. We're ultimately just here to experience. And the purpose of life is to experience life itself, the good and the bad and the ugly. But there has to be a learning process from it all. You can't just keep carrying on with no growth, with no learning. Otherwise, it kind of loses its point. So it's hard to forgive oneself, and sometimes you have to revisit times and do it again and again. It's also hard knowing when you're making a choice for the future, you can't always make choices in your life that everyone's happy with. You're going to make a choice and there'll be people who are saying, well, I hate you for that. I might have loved you for 20 years, but I hate you for doing that now, and I'm never going to talk to you again. But ultimately, you have to do what is right for you in your life. And that's really hard. You can sit and ponder in it, and sometimes it's best to do something and sometimes it's best to not do something. But often, especially now in times of change, one has to, and when one's done spiritual work for a long time, one has to stand in one's truth and say, I know that an action I'm taking, and I will do it with the greatest of compassion for all. I know it will hurt some people, but ultimately that's not my issue. That's not my bag of stones, because I have to make this move for my life. You're doing it with the greatest compassion. And that's hard. It is hard doing something when you're a spiritual person, because it might be easier to take the easier path and just say, well, I'll just, I'll suffer for myself as long as everyone else around me is happy. But that is not a spiritual path. You have to stand true to yourself and recognize that everyone else, they may respond however they respond, but that is their choice. And then it's their opportunity for growth. When you're putting someone else in a situation that they find challenging, it's their opportunity for growth, whether they, however they choose to respond. So there's so many ways of looking at this. But being a spiritual person is not about being nice to everybody and suffering yourself. When
Right.
it's the whole concept of a saint
Hmm.
is,
A
a bit of a red herring, I would say.
Yeah, the both the saint and the martyr. These are things that don't they do not coincide. And I don't know if I'm wrong in thinking this, but this is one thing that I think when we choose, in order for us to grow spiritually, we must choose a path, service to self or service to others. We have chosen service to others, but within that, it includes ourselves. So if we must love everybody else as we love ourselves and treat everybody as we treat ourselves and want to be treated. That means in the service to others, you are included. And if you don't love yourself, then technically you're not walking the path of service to others because you're not loving yourself as you love others. And this is something that, I find interesting.
Absolutely. So there's definitely a theme here about following your truth, and in doing so, it's not always the easy path, and oftentimes it's the hard path, and it's the uncertain path, and it's being, you know, true to yourself, and being able to follow that guidance that I think does bring us like the greatest growth and the greatest happiness too. After maneuvering through whatever is on that path for you. So I also wanted to touch on going back to we all have our own truth. So we have mentioned several times the Venn diagram that Becky and I created. So if you're a CC member, make sure that you look at the December topic and take a look at those. If you're not a CC member, it's free to join. So check us out because you do get a lot of amazing content here. I'm bringing up those circles again because Becky and I created those. And then later in the topic, we challenge ourselves and we put out a different theory that basically says you can impact everything. There's different possibilities and probabilities of it. So we put that out there as well. And Ramon had said we can't change our past. But I wanted to share their schools of thought that say every time we make new choices, it changes our past. And we just don't know it because we think whatever it was changed to is our truth. And so whichever philosophy that you believe, it doesn't really matter. We put out these topics so that we all have the opportunity to look within and think about what's my truth? What do I prefer? What do I want to see? What do I want to create for my reality? And that's the reason why I think we all have different realities that we're living in because of the choices that we make. So, if you disagree with any of this, that's great. Then it makes for a wonderful discussion. It makes for a wonderful opportunity to look within and to learn more about yourself and think about what you want and choose what you want.
Yeah, I agree. It makes a lot the conversations and the Zooms and the discussions and in the in-person meetings with members more interesting when people have different views and different ways of looking at it. Like what you said, Chris. You can't change the past, but I have listened to, for example, Cryon. He says time is not a line, time is an oval. So if you do change your present, you will change your past as well as changing your future. Others are saying it's a sphere. Time is a sphere. So different times and space are completely unrelated. It's not cause and effect. It is just completely energetically different. So yeah, no, absolutely. It gets into really interesting things when we go into these topics, as to what time is and everything. Yeah, awesome.
And I've always thought that time is a spiral. So, we never really know, do we? I mean, it is what it is. And there's definitely ways, portals can play with time. and connect two completely different times to make them close together. So, you know, the whole, I'm going to say universe, but it's bigger than that, multiverse, bigger than that. The whole of reality, as we perceive it, is so much more exciting than we could possibly imagine. And it's always there, and it's always doing something exciting. So I think when you look at it like that, there's never a time or a moment to be bored. Yes, there's a time to be at peace, but I think, you know, one should never be bored when you know the number of possibilities that there are out there for life itself. And we right now, we're one of the few billion souls on this planet as human beings. Yes, there are lots of souls as other creatures as well. But as a human being, we have a way of experiencing life itself and sovereignty to the fullest capacity, potentially, here on Earth. And I think that truth, it's my truth, is very exciting, and it's always something to live up to, and to aim for, because there is always something new and exciting to experience. So that's, you know, if things seem difficult, if things seem very challenging, if things seem bleak, or the future seems narrow, just remember that you can change that somehow, and that you also have a whole army of angels, spirit guides, beings. Some people have dragons and whatever, who are willing you and wishing you on with your life, for you to experience the best that you can, because so many other beings that are not incarnated right now are so excited and watch us like we're superstars. You know, we are their celebrity. We're experiencing life in this dimension right here, right now. And so many beings are championing each and every one of us to experience, to have a nice time as well. Do you know? I'm sure they want us to have a nice time, to experience nice things, to get the full Earth experience, as it were. You know, give or take, there's lots of different things that we can experience, but I just know it and I feel it, that we have a lot of support from spirit world, and from, of course, God source itself, because we are an aspect of that.
I love how you said about the potential that humanity has at this time and in this place. And I feel it's almost like when you plant your seeds and you're watching them come up out of the ground and emerge. I feel like there's a multitude cheering us on as we start to emerge, because we have no idea our full potential. And as we aim toward reaching our full potential and reaching our full expression, that's not a selfish thing. When you do that, that is what allows you, enables you to be in service, not just like to the whole of creation. It's like to be you fully. And it does require that deep inner connection. But I totally agree, Becky. I think we are in such an amazing time and are being called forth to discover and really embrace the fullness of the truth of us.
It's great
And we
you
have
mentioned,
help for it.
yeah. It's great you mentioned that, you know, the help that we get from our spirit guides and dragons and everything, because I have talked to several people and they say, "Oh, but I am so alone and I don't know what to do. I don't have anybody to help me." And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, it is impossible to be alone. You know, first of all, you have Mother Gaia, you have Mother, you know, the sun, you have the galaxy, you have your spirit guides, you have your angel guides, you have your, you know, many have dragons or divine creatures, many have ETs, past life, you know, may be with you. People who've actually transitioned may be with you. I'm like, it's absolutely impossible to be alone. But I understand the physicality of it. But you know, it's one thing that we're never alone, and we can get the help, you know, but we have to ask for it, and not necessarily ask for it. We need to be aware that it's there, you know. because they know what's going on. It's like some people are saying, why do we have to ask if they know what we're going through? We have to acknowledge they're there, and then they can help us. And I've had, because I do sometimes, talk to dragons, and they sometimes tell me, be specific. What exactly do you want me to help you with? And this helps us in many different ways. So it depends, and I tell when people feel a very, alone or threatened or fearful, I say just grab the hand of the angel next to you. Because these are things that you can, and these are the type of things you have to do to understand you're not alone. So wonderful you mentioned that.
Thank you, Ramon. And it's a bit like, so I was talking about, reading the signs in the world around you. This is how they communicate. So, I mean, I find personally that when I have an average day, when life is just day to day and it's average, I don't see many signs. I don't read many signs. Very occasionally something fun and exciting will pop up and I think, oh, that's a message, that's a gift, But when I'm doing something different, like when I went to America and I was very anxious about a couple of aspects of that involving the travel, my goodness, the signs were there so strongly for me. So I do find that they know when I'm doing something big and different with my life, and they show me that they're there with extra support, and I feel it so strongly. And I think it's starting to learn to feel the love of the beings around you that are not physically incarnated. I mean, you can't live it's not fun to live your whole life just with unincarnated beings around you. We have them in spades and we have our own specific ones, but it is important to connect with others who are incarnated at this time, like we are doing here. It's even better when we do it in person. I've met all of you in person, and it's just so exciting to do that. And actually going on to our reports now, because it's that time of year when the coordinators send in all the reports, and just reading always the highlights in any group anywhere around the world are meetups in person. And that shows that that's what we love, that's what we need, that's what we thrive for, is other human contact, especially people who are like-minded, who you can have the conversations that you want to have and not feel like you've got to filter your thoughts because they might not be acceptable. So it's wonderful to meet up with others who you can do that with. But getting back to reading the signs, yes, they are always there. Yes, you can put out a question, please send me a sign. And then maybe even you don't have to be too specific, but then just start looking out for them. And when you do, you then start to see, I mean, it's important not to get too engrossed in trying to read signs into everything. Again, the balance is important. It's always important balancing with everything. But for me, I don't look for signs so much, but I definitely notice when one comes my way because it's quite a strong one, and is always wonderful and always makes me think, oh my God, that's amazing. So, it's things like that to just to let one know. And we all have that. We all have our loved ones, people from past lives who are not incarnated right now, who are holding our hands through the challenging times, are the angels, beings of the highest vibration, who are looking out for us with the highest of love and care. And yes, spirit guides, animals. Many shamanic people absolutely love working with animal spirit guides, and different ones have different meanings. The Native Americans were really into that, the meanings of the symbology behind all the different animals in their lives, and what their meanings are, and the medicine, the animal medicine. There's always the wisdom and the medicine. So when you start to look on life like that, you realize how connected we are with everything, absolutely all that there is, and how the way we interact changes our future lives and the past, not only our present, but our future and our past, and also everything around us. And so we are co-creators with the divine and with all that is.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think this whole topic about there is help out there for us and that we are all connected is a really great place to wrap up. It's probably the most important thing that we've talked about is that to know that there's all kinds of support out there for each and every one of us, and ask for help and look for the signs because it's out there. So I don't know unless anyone has any other closing comments on that. We've been going for a while here.
I can say a quick anecdote that I heard from a member who is in, I can't remember if it was Minnesota or Wisconsin, so way up there north and very cold in the middle of winter. You know, you can test spirit sometimes. You have to find your own way of communicating with spirit. You know, need to be aware, like Becky says, you need to be aware of the signs. You know, each and every one of us can define a different way of communicating with spirit. You know, some, and this may sound weird, some see music and listen to numbers, you know, and others, you know, get signs like the Native American signs, you know, and other things. And this member told me that she tested spirit one time, and that was funny because she's like, was in the middle of winter. It was basically, I think it was 2 or 3 feet of snow. And she says, I want to know if spirit has to send me a message, confirm what I want to do. I want to see a blue butterfly. So this is in the middle of winter. Okay. You know, and so she's like, put it really difficult for spirit, you know, to give her a confirmation. And then she just goes down into town to go to I think it was a library or store or something. She opens the door and the first thing she sees is a gigantic blue butterfly printed on the wall. You know, so it's like spirit finds a way, you know. So it's I found that really interesting. It just stuck with me, that.
I love that. The spirit does find a way. So this has been a great discussion. Thank you, Sue and Ramon, for joining us. Thank you for everyone who's watching this podcast, and we'll see you next time.